Hi there. Welcome to Stories with Grandma Joan. I'm so glad you're here. Today we're going to read Pippi Longstocking in the South Seas, Chapter 6. It's called Pippi Goes on Board. On a beautiful morning, the Hop Toad sailed into the harbor, decorated with flags and pennants from end to end. The town band was on the pier, welcoming songs. The whole town had gathered to see Pippi receive her father, King Ephraim the First Longstocking. A photographer was also standing ready to snap a picture of their meeting. Pippi was jumping up and down with impatience, and the gangplank was hardly down before Captain Longstocking and Pippi rushed toward each other with shouts of joy. Captain Longstocking was so happy to see his daughter that he threw her way up in the air several times. Pippi was just as happy. She threw her father way up in the air still more times. And here is the picture. The only one who wasn't happy was the photographer, because he couldn't get a picture when either Pippi or her father was way up in the air all at the same time. Tommy and Annika also came forward and greeted Captain Longstocking, but oh, how pale and miserable they looked. It was the first time after their illness that they had been out. Pippi, of course, had to go on board and say hello to Friedolf and all her other friends among the seamen. Tommy and Annika trotted along too. They felt so strange walking around on a ship that had come from so far away. They kept their eyes wide open so as not to miss anything. They were especially eager to see Agaton and Theodore. But Pippi said that the twins had signed off the ship a long time ago. Pippi hugged all the sailors so hard that 5 minutes later they were all gasping for breath. Then she lifted Captain Longstocking up onto her shoulder and carried him through the crowd all the way home to Villa Villacula. Hand in hand, Tommy and Annika trudged along behind them. "Long live King Ephraim!" Ephraim, shouted all the people. They felt that this was a big day in the history of the little town. A few hours later, Captain Longstocking was in bed at Villa Villacula, sleeping and snoring away so that the whole house shook. Pippi, Tommy, and Annika were sitting around the kitchen table where the remains of a splendid supper was still in evidence. Tommy and Annika were quiet and thoughtful. What were they thinking about? Annika was just thinking that when you come right down to facts, she would much rather be dead. Tommy was sitting there trying to remember if there was anything in this world that was really fun, but he couldn't think of a thing. Life was an empty waste, he felt. But Pippi was in a wonderful mood. She stroked Mr. Nilsson, who was carefully making his way back and forth between the plates on the table. She stroked Tommy and Annika. She whistled and sang alternately and took a happy little dance steps now and then. She didn't seem to notice that Tommy and Annika were so downcast and miserable. "Going to sea for a bit again is going to be marvelous," she said. "Just think of being on the ocean where there is so much freedom." Tommy and Annika sighed. "Ah," they each said. "And I'm quite excited about seeing Kerkudut Island too. Imagine what it'll be like to lie stretched out on the beach, dipping my big toe in the South Pacific, and all I'll have to do is open my mouth and a ripe banana will fall right in," she said. Tommy and Annika sighed again. "It's going to be a lot of fun to play with the children down there," Pippi said. Tommy and Annika sighed again. "What are you sighing for?" said Pippi. "Don't you like the idea of my playing with the cute little native children?" "Of course," said Tommy. "But we're just thinking it will probably be a long time before you come back to Villa Villacula." "Yes, I'm sure of that," Pippi said. "But I'm not at all sorry. I think I can have almost more fun on Kerkudut Island." Annika turned a pale, unhappy face toward Pippi. "Oh, Pippi," she said, "how long do you think you'll stay away?" "Well, that's hard to say. Until around Christmas, I should think." Annika let out a wail. "Who knows, said Pippi. Maybe I'll like it so much in Crooked Island that I'll feel like staying there forever. Tra-la-la-la, she sang, and did a few more dance steps. To be a native princess, that's not a bad job for anyone who's had as little schooling as I have. Tommy and Annika's eyes looked out of their pale faces and began to have a peculiar glassy stare. Suddenly Annika bent over the table and burst into tears. "But come to think of it, I don't think I'd like to stay forever," said Pippi. "One can have too much of a court life and get sick of the whole business. So one fine day you'll probably hear me say, 'Tommy, Annika, how would you like to go back to Villa Kula for a while again?'" "Oh, how wonderful it will be when you write that to us," said Tommy. "Write," said Pippi. "You have ears, I hope. I have no intention of writing. I'll just say, 'Tommy, Annika, now it's time to go back to Villa Kula.'" Annika raised her head from the table, and Tommy said, "What do you mean by that?" "What do I mean?" said Pippi. "Don't you understand plain words, or have I forgotten to tell you that you're coming to Crooked Island? I thought I'd mentioned it." Tommy and Annika jumped to their feet. Their breath came in gasps. Then Tommy said, "You talk such nonsense. Our mother and father would never allow it." "Yes, they will," said Pippi. "I've already talked to your mother." For exactly 5 seconds there was silence in the kitchen at Villa Kula. Then there were two piercing yells from Tommy and Annika, who were wild with joy. Mr. Nilsson, who was sitting on the table and trying to spread butter on his hat, looked up in surprise. He was still more surprised when he saw Pippi and Tommy and Annika take one another by the hand and start dancing crazily around the room. They danced and shouted so that the ceiling lamp loosened and fell right down. Then Mr. Nilsson threw the butter knife out the window and started to dance himself. "Is it really, really true?" asked Tommy when they had calmed down and crawled into the wood bin to talk it over. Pippi nodded. Yes, it was really true. Tommy and Annika were to go along to Crooked Island. To be sure, all the ladies in the little town came to Mrs. Settergren and said, "You don't mean that you're thinking of sending your children off to the South Seas with Pippi Longstocking? You can't be serious," they said to her. Then Mrs. Settergren said, "And why shouldn't I? The children have been sick, and the doctor says they need a change of climate. As long as I've known Pippi, she has never yet done anything that has harmed Tommy or Annika in any way. No one can be kinder to them than she." "Yes, but after all, Pippi Longstocking," said the ladies, wrinkling their noses. "Exactly," said Mrs. Settergren. "Pippi Longstocking's manners may not always be what they ought to be, but her heart is always in the right place." On a chilly night in early spring, Tommy and Annika left the little town for the first time in their lives to travel out into the great strange world with Pippi. All three of them were standing at the rail of the Hop-Toad while the brisk night air filled the sails. The Hop-Toad was the name of the boat. Perhaps it would be more accurate to say all five, because the horse and Mr. Nilsson were there too. All the children's classmates were on the pier, almost in tears with regret, mingled with envy at their leaving. Tomorrow the classmates will be going to school as usual. Their geography homework was to study all the islands in the South Pacific. Tommy and Annika didn't have to do any homework for a while. Their health comes before school, the doctor had said, and they'll get to know the South Sea Islands firsthand, said Pippi. Tommy and Annika's mother and father were also on the pier. Tommy and Annika suddenly felt lumps in their throats when they saw their parents wiping their eyes with handkerchiefs. But Tommy and Annika still couldn't keep from being happy, so happy that it almost hurt. Slowly the Hop-Toad sailed out of the harbor. "Tommy and Annika," cried Mrs. Settergren, "when you get out to the North Sea, you have to put on 2 undershirts and—" The rest of what she was trying to say was drowned in the cries of farewell from the people on the pier, the wild whinnying of the horse, Pippi's happy noisiness, and Captain Longstocking's loud trumpeting when he blew his nose. The voyage had begun. The Hop-Toad was sailing out under the stars. Ice blocks were floating around the bow, and the wind was singing in the sails. "Oh, Pippi," said Annika, "I have such a funny feeling. I'm beginning to think I'll be a pirate too when I grow up." And that is the end of chapter 6 of Pippi in the South Seas. And next time we'll read chapter 7. Bye-bye. I'm so glad you came. Bye-bye.